All right, this is 5.2. We're going to finish up our order of operations for this section. So with order of operations, you may have heard of please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or otherwise known as PEMDAS. But I like to use this pyramid to help us discern which order of operation is going to be needed first. So what you have to be careful is that the P obviously stands for parentheses, but I'm going to include any grouping symbols in this. And so we're going to start obviously with our parentheses, but then we can move out to brackets, and then eventually we can go even a little bit further to braces. After the grouping symbols, then we have our exponents, which we just learned how to do. So 3 to the third power means 3 times 3 times 3, which gives me 27. Now here's where the difference is. Multiplication and division operate left to right, okay? Operate left to right. So if we only have those two operations, then we want to make sure that we are reading it like a sentence. We go left to right. Then addition and subtraction are the same. Okay, they operate left to right. So we're going to start with our order of operations here. We're going to start with some problems, and they're going to be very simple steps, and then we're going to build on them, okay? So usually what I do is I make sure I read the problem out loud, and then I figure out which operation I'm going to do first. So when I say 15 minus 8 times 2, I know that multiplication comes before subtraction. So I'm going to replace that with the actual calculation. And then anything else that I have not done, I bring it down. So I encourage you to use like one line per step so that you aren't making any careless mistakes. Then I could turn this into an addition problem if I wanted to and make that adding the opposite. And so I know that I will get a -1. The next problem, -15 plus 25 divided by 5. I do division first, and then I bring down the -15 plus 5. If I started at -15 on the number line and then I moved 5 units to the right, then I would end up at -10. The reason that we do these order of operations is so that everybody comes up with the same solution. Now we start introducing parentheses. So for each group, I'm going to do the parentheses separate. And I would like you to put kind of a star by this one because this one's an important one, especially with that second group of parentheses. So 24 minus 8 divided by 4, I know I'm going to divide first and get 2. Bring down the subtract and the 24. I keep that in parentheses because I'm not done with that grouping. And then I go ahead and do the subtraction so that I get my final answer of that first group of parentheses as 22. Now the second one, it is a very common mistake for somebody to do 4 times 2 first and then do the division. But because this only has multiplication and division, those are the only operations in that group of parentheses, you have to do division first. So 48 divided by 4 is 12. Then I will multiply 12 by 2, and then I will get 24. And then I can bring down the subtraction sign in between. And if I need to, I can change that to adding the opposite, and I will get my answer of -2. And the reason I like that is I always try to put a problem on there where you will actually do division first rather than multiplication. So the next group, we start doing the similar stuff. Again, parentheses, we have division. I replace that with a 4, add the 25, keep that in parentheses. 25 plus 4 is 29, and now I'm finished with that group. Going to the second group, I take 7 times 2, that's 14. I add 3, and I replace that with 17. And then I bring down the subtract. And so 29 minus 17 is going to be 12. So now the next thing I'm going to look at is starting to increase the steps by having parentheses and then possibly some exponents. So this first group, I'm going to take negative 17 plus 21, and that gives me 4, which needs to stay in the parentheses because now I have to square it. I'm going to bring down the times 3 and the division, and then I'm going to go ahead and do my next set of parentheses to give me negative 6. Now, the only reason I use the parentheses is just to separate the negative sign. You can use it or you don't have to. Then I am going to square 4 times 4, and that gives me 16 times 3 divided by negative 6. Now this one, as I read it as a sentence, the multiplication will come first. So I get 48 divided by negative 6, which yields my negative 8 answer. Okay? All right, so continuing along, we will I'm going to change a few things. So here I would probably take care of my double negative and make that a positive. I'm going to subtract 13 minus 17, that's negative 4 in parentheses squared, times 5 divided by, and then 23 plus 17 is 40. Okay? Now, it's very important that you have this negative 4 in parentheses because if you didn't, then it would make your answer negative. But negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. Multiply by 5, then divide by 40. And so 16 times 5 is 80, and 80 divided by 40 is 2. Now this next one you have to be very careful because you'll notice that the negative with the base of 5 right here and the negative with the base of 2 is not included in parentheses. So that means that it's going to be a negative answer. So negative 5 without parentheses squared is negative 25. And 5 cubed is 125, and that stays in parentheses because I haven't done the addition, divided by negative 2 without the parentheses squared is negative 4, and 2 cubed is 8. And then that's all in brackets that I will eventually have to multiply by negative 3. Negative 25 plus 125 is 100, divided by negative 4 plus 8 is 4. That stays in brackets, which I will eventually have to multiply by negative 3. And 100 divided by 4 is 25, which I can now multiply by negative 3 to give me negative 75. So you can see you can do more than one step on a line, but you just got to be very careful to make sure that your steps, that you don't lose signs during your step. That's the biggest thing. If you lose a sign, then it's kind of downhill from there, okay? All right, so now let's approach this one. So we're going to do our parentheses first. Negative 6 plus 8, that is 2. That I have to raise to the third power, and then I have the negative 3. Minus 5, negative 3 plus 5, that is also 2 raised to the third power. So then I have to replace 2 to the third power, if you wanted to write it out, that is 8 times negative 3. And then we've got minus 5, and then of course that is going to be 8 as well. So now I get negative 24 minus 40. And if you wanted to change it to plus a negative, then you would get negative 64. Okay? All right, so here, really the only parentheses I see is this double negative, so I'm going to go ahead and change that to a plus, and then I'm going to take care of my exponents. So 10 squared is 10 times 10, which is 100. Bring down the minus 100, divided by 5 squared, which is 5 times 5, or 25, times 2 plus 3. So this is really tricky. You have to find, you've got subtraction, you've got division, you've got multiplication, and you've got addition. So when you read it left to right, you must do the division first and then the multiplication. So we leave the 100. 100 divided by 25 is 4 times 2 plus 3. Okay, so I'm just replacing the division. Now I can replace the multiplication. So 100 minus 4 times 2 is 8 plus 3. And so now I go left to right. 100 minus 8 is 92 plus 3 is 95. Okay, got just a few more here. So in this one, I've got brackets, I've got parentheses inside the brackets, and I'm also subtracting a negative. So I would probably go through and take care of that. Then I would write my 30 divided by, I would take care of my exponent. 5 squared is 25. And then I would go ahead and take care of 7 minus 12, which is negative 5. And then I've got plus 9 over here. So now I'm going to take 25 and divide it by negative 5, which is negative 5. I've got the 30 division plus 9. I would take 30 divided by negative 5, which makes negative 6 plus 9, and that's going to be positive 3. So this next one, the biggest mistake that I see students do, and I'm going to highlight this and then unhighlight it. The biggest mistake that I see students do is that they take this 8 minus 3 first and they make 5. And then they do all the other stuff. But you have to remember that that negative 3 out in front of the brackets is being multiplied. I don't want to use the distributive property until I clean all of that stuff up inside the parentheses. So I'm going to take this 5 minus 7, that's negative 2. Bring the original negative 2 in front, the minus 5. 4 minus 2 is 2, and that all stays in brackets with the 8 minus 3 out in front. Now I'm going to take negative 2 times negative 2, which is 4, 5 times 2, which is 10, and I'm going to subtract those, and that's in brackets with the 8 minus 3 still out in front. Going to do the subtraction. 4 minus 10 is negative 6. And then I have the 8 minus 3. And again, the most common wrong answer is negative 30. Somebody's going to take 8 minus 3 and get 5, and take 5 times negative 6 and get negative 30. But you have to remember that multiplication comes before addition or subtraction. So I'm going to take this negative, because that is a negative. And so one way to help me is to go ahead and make that a negative 3 times a negative 6 is a positive 18, and then I add 8 to it, and I get my final answer of 26. Okay? All right, I think this is the last one. Now, I want you to be careful of this. Okay, because that right there, most people, when they make mistakes, they're going to put it as a positive 9. But because that negative sign is not in parentheses, what that means is this. So that is going to be a negative 9. Then I'm going to put plus 2. I'm going to put my brackets. I'm going to write 20. Whoops, lost my bracket here. To 20 divided by, and I'm going to go ahead and take 7 minus 11, which is negative 4. And so then 20 divided by negative 4 is negative 5, which I will then multiply by 2, which I will then add negative 9 to. So this becomes negative 19, that becomes negative 10, which I'm going to add to negative 9, which gives me the solution of negative 19. So I believe that finishes, that finishes everything off for the 5.2. I probably will start a small video on the rational numbers so that we can kind of get a jump ahead since we are missing class.